All right, Chelsea fans. Welcome back to another episode of the London is Blue podcast live on YouTube. We are very excited to talk about this match. Question mark. Lots to dive into as Chelsea lose 4-1 to Celtic in a game in South Bend, Indiana, played at Notre Dame Stadium, which the setting was much cooler than the entire game experience for Chelsea going supporters. I am joined by Ollie Glanville and, of course, the man, the myth, the legend, Sam, a.k.a. CFC Central. Ollie, how are we doing?
Yeah, great. Let's get into it, man.
Sam, I'm sure you were taking deep tactical notes throughout this match experience. Can you sum up what you saw in one word, please?
Yeah, unsurprising. Let's just go with that. I don't want to be too much of a dampener because I did look at the game and I saw a team struggling to match Celtic's pace. Let's just be honest, they are leagues ahead in terms of where they're supposed to be, and they're just going to be getting into their league season. So yeah, I wouldn't put a lot of stock into what happened today. Obviously, a horrid result, and that's what matters at the end of the day. But yeah, I think there are a lot of issues tactically that need to improve and will improve when you take out eights like Carney and Nkunku and you put in real eights like say Connor or Dewsbury Hall or Moises Caicedo for that matter. So I've been quite critical of Maresca's tactics. I wrote an entire newsletter on it, got burnt for it, Nick, saying you're a doomsayer and you're like a prophet of catastrophe and yada yada. But yeah, those things definitely did pop up today. So I'm uh, even then I'm still saying don't press the panic button yet. There's a lot to come and it'll improve.
Yeah, look, I wouldn't know anything about being called negative personally, so don't you dare worry about it, Sam. It's all good. Just a quick programming note here for those who are joining us live on YouTube. Editor Jake is, of course, driving us forward as our producer. If you have questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, put them in the comments. We will try and bring as many of those up as possible throughout the stream here. I think what we're going to cover, just for everyone, a little recap of the match, some version of 3 up, 3 down, if you dare. I think general point of the preseason chatter is necessary. Obviously, we have seen plenty of results in preseason over the years that have mattered and that have not mattered, and so I think we have to kind of contextualize preseason a little bit. A little bit of position group analysis, because I think there's a lot of very interesting stuff that we've seen through 2 matches here in the Maresca era. And then a little bit to close on what needs to happen before we suit up again midweek. So a lot to get through here, but I think just to kind of take it from jump, Ollie, first half, Chelsea break out very quickly, have a really solid first 10 minutes, are controlling the ball in a great way. The passing looks sharper than maybe we saw against Wrexham. A couple of chances go begging. Yep. And from roughly the 10th minute on, Celtic kind of figured out what we were trying to do and just started playing around I wouldn't even dare call it a press. It was like a pseudo press that we were putting out there and playing through our high line with relative ease and, causing a bunch of chaos. And they go up 2-0 in the first half. What were your thoughts on the first half with that player group and general musings, if you will?
Yeah, look, I think we started both halves quite well on the front foot. Like, we should have scored in the 10 minutes at the beginning of both halves, to be honest. But yeah, Maresca's tactics are a gamble, right? They're a gambit. He's been on record saying this a lot, and the relative fitness levels were quite palpable at times, right? We could see the difference between like us being a couple of steps off and Celtic being ready to go on the weekend, which is what they have to be because that's when the Scottish League starts, right? But yeah, I think Wes pressing into midfield and ultimately into like the number 10 position at times was quite eye-opening to me. It did feel like a tactical choice. It did absolutely feel like, you know, he was given the role of pressing that aggressively, and I did think it set the tone for everything else, because, you know, in our final third we were pressing quite aggressively. Guiu again, you know, we'll come on to the other names as well, but we were pressing quite high. But what it meant was when we didn't gain that ball around the Celtic box, we were incredibly open. There was a chasm in midfield, and, you know, this is not an isolated incident. You know, it happened at Leicester a lot in transition, and it puts a lot of pressure on players like a Reece James, Wesley Fofana, who, you know, in the last year or so have not been the fittest of players, right? So I think they got a lot of recovery sprints into those hamstrings, which ultimately, you know, they came out of it, you know, touch wood, with no issues, and that's mainly the point of this game, right? So it was a really good test, if you want to color it that way. I think a lot of our kind of potential weaknesses were exposed, and as Sam said, like, we've not got all our best players around at the moment, and that was quite obvious at times. But yeah, just being stretched like that this early on in preseason, I think will make a few people in the coaching setup maybe analyze things a bit differently, and maybe think about different players and their roles. So yeah, I think there's maybe a lot to take from it, but also the fact that, you know, it's only second game in preseason, and once again we're like taking off tonight. We're going to Atlanta, right? So, you know, there's not really much time to analyze this stuff and and turn it around and get another 90 minutes on the leg. So yeah, I think that's another part of it, Nick.
Let me just, you know, I think for all the travel nerds out there, I think it's roughly like 1,800 miles between San Francisco and South Bend via Chicago. So, I mean, it's not an insignificant flight if you've ever done that flight before. I know Dan, who is unfortunately not here today, has done New York to Seattle a bunch in his life, which is roughly like 6.5 hours and roughly 3,500 miles, something like that. So it's a lot of travel, and now they're going to basically do the rest of the U.S. from Chicago down to Atlanta, and so it just makes it, you know, really difficult from a recovery perspective to do all this sort of travel. Luckily, once they're in Atlanta, it gets a little bit easier, smidgen easier, because they're a little tighter with the rest of the matches. But it's a hell of a lot of travel, and talk about a gamble. These preseason tours are a gamble; they really are. So just want to touch on, if you're a stats nerd, I'll just bring up the stats from this game, and you can do with them what you wish. Chelsea, 57% of possession, feels higher than it looked live to me, but, you know, whatever, take that for what it is. Chelsea, 10 shots on goal, 1 goal, the penalty at the end with Christopher Nkunku scoring. Celtic, 11 shots on target out of 14 total attempts. That means that they're just getting very clear chances, and we will talk about that at length in this show. Chelsea had 23 total shot attempts. Some were squibs, some were just shots into players with very little chance of making it through. And so I think just quality of chances, Celtic blew us away on the day. No yellow cards, although there could have been a couple. Chelsea did have 11 corners to Celtic's 2. And corners are going to be an interesting tactical piece that we will chat about. And Sanchez did make 7 saves of the 11 shots on target, in addition to some acrobatics in midfield that will come up as well, with largely Schmeichel making 9 saves for Celtic. So those are the stats. I mean, again, do with them what you will. But Chelsea did start out with Guiu up top, Nkunku and Chukwuemeka, Mudryk, Lavia, James, Madueke, Colwill, Badiashile, Fofana, and Sanchez in the first half. So I'll pass this over to you, Sam. What was the first thing that kind of stood out to you in the first half? Was it Fofana pressing as aggressively as he was? Was it Nkunku's insistence that he got on the ball a little bit more in this game? What stood out to you?
Yeah, just sort of to point out this was the first time Nkunku's played 80 minutes since last year. I don't think he played that many minutes in preseason last year either. So good to see him, feature for that long, stay on the pitch for that long for us. So always good. Yeah, something that's sort of struck me as not ordinary is like the eights don't seem to be working. A lot of the stress that is there in Maresca's aids is to try and provide off-ball support for your wingers because they have this 1v1 tendency. You have to provide that opening to them to take on the fullback. And Celtic just had a lot of time to double up to give their fullback support. And when you do that, and when you don't have an overlapping fullback, it's far too easy to defend against, even somebody like a Mudrik or a Madueke. So this happened against Wrexham, where Carney wasn't making runs and Kunku was sort of staying on the same line as his winger, which he shouldn't be doing. He should be sprinting towards the box. He should be trying to hit the byline and basically provide a cutback, which he wasn't doing. So always going to be challenging there. And I think that needs to be improved. And the moment you see it, Conor Gallagher or a Dewsbury Hall come into those roles, you see the full extent of what those eights need to be doing. So I think certain things for lack of fitness, for lack of roles or profiles aren't happening, which is affecting how we attack, how we interpret those roles. So they're always going to be, just a matter of time before those things get rectified. But those things not happening always struck me as odd.
Yeah, and look, I think there's obviously a lot of feelings out there about this match, and I think if you're on the holy shit, this was terrible side of things, you could be justified in feeling that way. If you're on the it's only preseason side, I think you're justified in feeling that way as well. I think what we're trying to hopefully accomplish on this podcast is some sort of middle ground that doesn't sway too heavily either way. I think, for example, I was the one doing the tweets today on Twitter, and I'd say for me, pretty neutral stuff. Pretty neutral stuff. Could have been worse. I think the Batty Shield back pass was as bad as I looked at it in the second half. But yeah, I think the thing that I took out of the first half in particular is the set pieces. It's something I want to touch on here, guys, because obviously there's all this buildup about Bernardo Cueva coming in and having a real set piece coach for the first time in a couple of years, and the impact that might have on our season. We know that in the Premier League, especially, if you have a chance on set pieces, you have a chance in games, and because the league is so physical, you have to take advantage of those dead ball opportunities when you get them. I think that there are some very clear patterns. If you're watching our corners, we haven't had a whole lot of dead ball free kicks yet, but like if you watch our corners in particular, Reece James was targeting Wesley Fofana on our first 5 corners straight out of the gate. And Wes was a little bit off of the pace to get there on each of the first 4. And then they finally got the 5th one. And I was like, ooh, that's potentially very tasty, Ollie, in terms of trying to figure out how we're going to score all the goals that we'll need to succeed this season. We basically had nothing last year from set pieces, maybe even worse than nothing if you count defending. This is a different sort of look and feel so far. It feels more physical to me in the box. It feels like there's a lot more physicality happening. What are your thoughts on the set pieces so far?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is just having that consistency of delivery. And I don't know if you know this, Nick, but Reece James is a hell of a footballer.
I've never heard of him personally, so that's good. That's really good.
He can deliver a hell of a ball, and yeah, it's quite interesting to note that we clearly have these kind of primary profiles we're aiming for. So in the first game, Tosin started, and he was very much the kind of first guy Reece is aiming for. And we had a couple of moments where, if he's a bit fitter, maybe Tosin bundles that in the first game. And then today, it was very much, as you say, Wes, right? Wes was the kind of primary guy you hit. And yeah, just having that consistency and like it actually making sense and finding your man a lot of the time is such a huge step up from last season, which essentially felt like, you hit Thiago or you hit Trev or nothing actually happens. And yeah, I think having that consistency of delivery, that consistency of kind of system in and around the box really makes sense and will really help us out. And yeah, it it didn't work so well right at the end when we were trying some kind of improvised thing, but maybe that points to the fact that when we're actually training this stuff and it's regimented, it's really kind of paying dividends. And I know we've not seen a goal from set pieces just yet, but yeah, I mean, that is clearly an upside to Quaver coming in. And the guy has a UEFA A license or B license, I forget which. So he clearly knows his way around the football pitch anyway. He's a clever guy. So yeah, let him cook, Nick.
Look, more Reece James on the ball is good for Chelsea Football Club. I think that is a very good point. Sam, I just on the set pieces, and we'll close this little point out. I have found them to be more about Reece James putting the ball into a dangerous area and a Chelsea player finding that area than I have him playing it to a particular head. It's like you're putting it kind of just off of the penalty spot, kind of middle right or middle left of that area, and then it is Wes Fofana or any one of our kind of taller profile players' responsibility to get to that spot. Is that how you are seeing it, or am I off?
Yeah, I mean, like Ollie mentioned, I mean, at this point in preseason, you're sort of like trying to figure out what works, what doesn't work. A lot of the first five corners were again near post, two ahead of a rampaging centre back. Today it was West Fofana twice, I think, in the first three or four corners. Against Wrexham, we had Tosin who tried to attack the near post and the ball hit his arm, so that became a handball. West attacked one, Badiashile attacked one. So genuinely the first, I think, 10 set pieces have all been about Reece James, in swingers to the near post and a centre back attacking. I do think there will be other varieties that we'll see as and when the season rolls on. But yeah, it's I would say a basic good way to start. And obviously, when you have Reece James on set piece duties, this is going to be his only opportunity to cross into the box. So I think he's going to be relishing it more than ever. And yeah, we tend to forget how good he is when he's putting the ball, on the head of players. So yeah, great to have that kind of set piece taker. Pochettino bemoaned the lack of one in the squad last season. Just having that quality again is a game changer. So hopefully that will yield about 10 to 15 goals, and more importantly, help us keep them away from our box. And if you can get a +10 deficit there, then yeah, you basically skyrocket. I would say 6 or 7 points up the table.
I will say, and maybe this is a little bit of position group analysis that we can get to, but I think the thing that worries me most about this system is that you're taking two players in Reece James and Malo Gusto whose qualities are exceedingly bright in getting forward and crossing the ball into dangerous areas and open play, and essentially making them defensive midfielders who can't really play those dangerous passes in any sort of attacking movement. And Ollie, to me, that seems counterproductive for our success. And Elliot here agrees with us as we're talking about it. What are your thoughts on this changeover and what is being expected of Reece James in this new role?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a lot. I think a lot is being put on his shoulders, and he's a world-class footballer, so you'd expect that to happen. He's arguably probably one of the best players, if not the best player in our squad right now. Even surpassing Cole Palmer in terms of completeness forward and back. But just kind of asking him to essentially dictate play from the middle. So it shouldn't be his role. Today it was Lavia, right, sitting next to him to kind of clean up around him. It shouldn't be his role to have to drop deep to centre back, cover right back, play that offside trap, and give opportunities for Chukwuemeka to break forward, or actually to help out on the right hand side with Madueke. And I think what Sam said was really important earlier, is that it's so easy to isolate our wingers right now. And that just wouldn't happen if Reece was just playing a standard right back position and he'd be allowed to push on. And maybe that is down to the fact that, you know, Carnes isn't used to playing this kind of almost miniature, like box to box 8, where like it's like the end of the middle third to the final third where he's playing. But what ends up happening is Nkunku's coming deep to the ball. Carnes is coming deep to the ball. And Reece is then like almost going centre back position. And he's just not going to influence attacking play from there, right? No matter how world class his distribution is. And when you think of, you know, one of your favorite players, Nick, Azpilicueta, when he was inverting in that kind of, you know, 3-5-2, and we had Morata or whoever up front, and he would take up this kind of very obvious crossing position in kind of inverted, but just outside the box. So it would almost be like an 8 roll, right? And he could ping in crosses, kind of where Enzo plays best, right, for Argentina or wherever. So the fact that Reece isn't allowed to kind of push up there is kind of it looks sort of baffling because you know, he is one of our best players, if not our best player, in terms of just talent alone. So you want those players to influence higher up the pitch. And I think again with Nkunku, who again is probably one of our most important players and will be if he's fit this season, you want him challenging around the box as well. You don't want him dropping deep and kind of playing it out of possession. I would say like the caveat to this is, yes, it's the second game in preseason, right? And it is a big departure from what Mauricio Pochettino was playing. So it is a lot of change all at the same time. We don't have our best midfielders here. Like Moy is not playing where Romeo Lavia is. Lavia's been out for, you know, essentially 12 months at this point, right? This is his first start, or like Wes's first start for almost a year as well. So like we have to take all these things into consideration. They're taking these ideas in. They're very new ideas. They're very kind of fixed ideas. And, you know, going back to what I was saying at the beginning, it is a big gamble, but maybe the upside when it all clicks into gear will work out against teams that play open. Like my caveat to that is just we did see things last season at Leicester where, you know, once you lose the ball and the high press doesn't necessarily work, it is a very high XG chance for the opposition. Like, you know, today, obviously Benoit gifted them with an assist, but you know, other than that, there are other goals, goals you'll see on like the schoolboy, like a school ground, right? Just hugely open, and that wasn't like the only times we were open in the game. So I think you have to see the disparity in fitness levels. Celtic are ready to go for this weekend. We have three more games to go. Like we need to see that kind of stepped progression. And, you know, we did see a lot of players playing a lot more than I expected them to actually today, which I thought was really interesting. Usually you see a lot of rotation.
Yeah.
So that's something I thought was really interesting, Nick.
Sam, one thing that I'm taking away from just how it looks right now, and of course how it looks right now, hopefully is not how it's going to look when we play City in 3 weeks from today, just if you're counting at home. It's very much an upside down triangle. It's very narrow in defense, right? So if you're an opposition winger and your team wins the ball back, you play it down the side and you're off to the races. And then it broadens out as we get into the attack. And I think what I've noticed so far, and this is not going to be the most like polished way to say this, is like it gets really squished from midfield to attack. It's almost as if our attackers are dropping a little too deep and our midfield is either being played through or they're pushing up a little too high, especially in, you know, as we start to build out from the back. Are you noticing these things as well, or am I losing my mind?
Yeah, no. The comment that I made at halftime was I think the team is pressing in two minds. There's one that knows it has to press intensely, and the other that knows that they're not fit enough to do it. And it just looked as if, like, one half wanted to push at times, and Kunku was telling Mudrik to take a player, and Mudrik was basically trying to come deeper. Obviously, his first 45 minutes, so he's trying to conserve his energy, make sure that he's playing his 45 well. And the moment Celtic dropped players deeper. Lavia did not follow. James did not follow. So you could see those are roles that they're not familiar with. Lavia is not at Southampton asked to track somebody into the attacking third as a DM. He's not done that. James hasn't tracked a number 8 from central midfield to attacking positions. He's not done that. So those are things that happen a lot. And I will have to watch this again, but I would urge you to go to the drinks break, the first half drinks break, and just watch Badiashil's reaction because he's absolutely fuming. He's pissed. And Colville actually had to keep an arm around him saying, calm down, because you need to get yourself together. But he was frazzled for multiple reasons. He was the CCB. West was pushing into the number 10 position. Colville was tracking their right winger into the midfield third. And what Furuhashi was doing, Celtic centre forward, was he was staying offside about like 6 yards or 7 yards from Badiashile. And the moment the centre backs, the wider centre backs were trying to play an offside trap, Badiashile was like, how am I going to cover him 6 yards, ahead of me if you're playing these guys on side? So he was just absolutely pissed, saying, "You're not asking me to man mark or stay tight to my man. If I go follow him deeper, I play everyone on side. So what am I doing here?" And these are things that happened with Yannick Vestergaard. These are things that happened with Valsfest, where it took a lot of synergy, it took a lot of understanding to get those instructions right. You have to be able to execute those decisions, and there needs to be a high level of awareness between your players. Even the young guys like Fatawu, very, very good in terms of what they needed to do. And that's what you're asking from this team. And that's why I said, I have so many doubts. Like, can you trust Mudrik and Madueke and Sterling in 1v1 positions after last season? My answer is no. It's a resounding no. Yeah, and that 1v1 kind of situation in the championship, where you are a Premier League level winger against championship level fullbacks, obviously you're going to get 20 goals and assists. Are you going to do that in the Premier League? My answer is no. And sooner rather than later, Maresca will have to figure out a tweak to go around it. So, like Ollie said, if the tweak is pushing Reece James as the guy who's wide right, can you find a way to accommodate that? And there are, situations and things you can do to do exactly that. Caicedo is playing on the right hand side. For De Zerbi, he's played as a right back. So, can you cover Reece James while he holds width on the right hand side and then basically switch positions when you're able to at the end of the sequence? Those are things that Maresca has to find out through this preseason. Obviously,
Yeah.
when the conditioning becomes better, 100%, everything else looks better. The execution looks better. But right now, 2 games in, I'm just looking at intent and ideas. Like, what is he trying to do with players and what is he trying to achieve at the end of it? I see some good things. I see some catastrophic things. Hopefully, it's a work of art. And as soon as he puts those last brush strokes there, it'll look like a prettier picture.
Ollie, you're nodding along here. You're saying the same exact things, right?
Look, I don't think he's going to rip up his kind of hymn sheet here, right? I don't think he's going to completely change everything. And I do think we will look better against maybe Club America, for instance, who are going to play open and don't sit deep, and maybe will be another few days along, and it will look better. But the reality is that that top level coaching is about compromises, right? Everyone always compares. There was the whole memes around Maresca being Pep 2.0 and things like that, but I would argue that Pep himself is like Pep 4.0 at this point, right? So if you're going back to what Pep used to be with this kind of very static positional play, the best moments for Man City are when they abandon those moments and they rely on individualism. So the brilliance of Kevin De Bruyne or Doku last season, right? Or Haaland just, bloody minded, just runs through and scores a goal, right? So the reality is you have to account at the top level, not championship level. At the very top level, you have to allow your best players to do their thing. I think it's like that simple. You have to allow your most creative players the license to break that kind of slightly, positional walls that you've built around them. You have to allow them to stride out of them every once in a while and break a block, break the play, break the press, because that is something you have to compromise on with top level players. And Maresca has never managed a team of this talent. And you know, it's weird saying that after losing 4-1 to Celtic today, but the reality is, like, it is a stacked squad. It's a very young squad. There's lots of rawness to it, but the quality is there, and we'll know, like, yeah, exactly. Cole Palmer is going to come back into this squad. You know, Moises Caicedo is going to come back into this squad, which I think will fundamentally change how the midfield looks right now, because he basically has to play this role for Ecuador. Like, anyone who's watched him for Ecuador, he has to be everywhere all at once. So that might change a little thing.
Let me just bring up the midfield, because one thing I noticed, particularly in the first half, we talked a little bit about West Fofana going on side quests up the field as a number 10, which was, be honest, entertaining, but perhaps not the required thing at that point. And unlike the first half against Wrexham during the midweek, Reece James kind of sat back and was more of the anchor for when the team stepped on and played the high line and all that sort of stuff. About 25 minutes in, that stopped completely. And Reece James then resumed his role as partner to Romeo Lavia. Romeo Lavia looked quite lost for most of this game. And I think you probably would be too if you're the center back you're supposed to be playing the ball back to was up near the goal. So there was a lot of fun wrinkles here in the first half, but whereas I think Lavia had a lot more time and space against Wrexham to kind of do his thing and play some casual passes, and did look okay, to be fair to him. This was not that sort of game. Celtic did really concentrate, even though they were sat back. They did concentrate their forward line around our midfield, trying to like limit space and time to pass. And that is going to be something that Chelsea needs to solve for. Now, Chelsea's three best midfielders are not with the team or playing right now. I guess Caicedo's back, but you know, the awareness and the quickness that needs to come with it just simply will improve. It does make the Andre Santos conundrum to me really interesting, though, because I know at least Ollie and I feel this way, Sam, but I'll pass this to you. Andre Santos doesn't need time or space to complete a pass. He simply just turns and makes the pass, and it's very quick, and it allows the team to kind of maybe break out of some of those tougher moments in midfield. It's already been rumored that he's going to Strasbourg on another loan this year. The terms of that loan have been wildly reported, and they're all over the map. Let's just pretend it's another year loan. Should Enzo be reconsidering that based on what has been shown so far in 2 games, which is way too early to say, but throwing the hypothetical at you, Sam.
Definitely answer the question. All he knows, I'm a massive Andre Santos fan. I've been watching Vasco games since when he was 17 years old, and you know, there's absolutely, without a doubt, a player in there, somebody who's going to be a world beater if you nurture him properly. And the great thing is he can play all those roles in midfield to a very high level of, competency. You can put him at the 6, you can put him as an 8, and he will give you something. He will shuttle into the box. He will provide those instructions. So to me, the logical move would be to send Ugo Chukwu on loan and to have a guy who can cover all those 3 positions, because I think that's what Les also needs. He didn't feature a lot last season. I think he's definitely got a year where he can go out and create that kind of playing minutes which he wanted last season, obviously didn't get. So keep Santos, cover all 3 positions, because you know how injury issues happen at Chelsea in the middle of the season. So just as an emergency option, keep him. And in a season where you have 60, 65 plus games, he gets 1,500, 2,000 minutes easy. So for me, that's definitely not going to be an issue. But yeah, I think it will improve. Like, I would again reference both your points, which are very salient in this matter. With additional fitness, with, I would say, Jackson running the line. Hugh's been pretty good, but Jackson is, a completely different beast altogether. So you have Jackson, you have Palmer, you have Enzo and Moy coming in. Those 4 players alone are a massive upgrade on any of those positions that we've played so far. It's just how quickly can you get them up to speed, which is going to be, the big issue. So I still think Connor still has a big role to play as well. Every manager starts off by trying to say, okay, we'll play the director's signings, we'll play Ugochukwu, And then 2 games later, it's Conor Gallagher again, and then people realize just why the hell he's lasted so long, because he is that guy. Call him Caladog, but this a dog is exactly what this team needs. He wouldn't have taken any of those score lines that popped up on my screen. 2-0, he would have like knocked 3 Celtic players out, like without a doubt. So, that's what you need at this point in time. So I can't wait for him to be back, to be honest. So looking
Same.
forward to it.
Yeah, look, speaking of players that should come back into the team, Trevoh Chalobah is probably looking at what the backline shown so far and been like, hey, I'm pretty good at this stuff. I don't know if you guys want to potentially look at me as an option to come back in. Let's talk about the back line just quickly. We'll touch on goalkeeper. We'll touch on the forward group. We can make our way through these pretty quick. The back line, I think, is feeling the stress of not knowing when to step and also where the midfield is going to be at any particular time right now. And they look to me, Ollie, like they're thinking and not playing. And that is just a terrible place to be. Of course, that will improve. And you expect, what is a pretty talented group across the board to improve massively. But what we saw today is them just getting played in behind, not knowing where the other was. And it was just kind of a disaster from start to finish.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we saw some big mistakes as well. But yeah, I think you touched on it at the beginning, it's kind of an inverted pyramid, right? And then when the inverted pyramid, one of those people is also sprinting to try and close down in the 10 position, and then we kind of overturn the ball, it becomes a huge issue. And Reece having to kind of have that dual role in terms of inverting into midfield and not occupying that wide space. And I still don't really understand the kind of responsibilities of that. And I didn't really understand them at Leicester either. Like, does Reece actually have to take this role? Like, is it also his man that the pressing 8 is also his man, but then is the wide man also his man? Like, does someone have to come across and take that on? I think there are so many kind of handover issues. And yeah, like May Dollar says, like the communication is just not there. But I'm not sure, even with brilliant communication, you could sort out the offside traps that we were putting in that first half, because we were making offside traps off the back of huge recovery runs, and like that's just not sustainable at any stage. Like, if you've ever run at any level, like at school or after like a sibling or whatever, and you have to stop and like have the spatial awareness to know where 3 other guys are in your vicinity and catch that line, like it's just not going to happen, even for elite athletes, right? So I think just that side of things is where we see the most trouble. Like, transition to me is like a huge alarm bell at the moment, and it was at times last season under Pochettino, of course, as well, right? We were worst when we handed the ball over and tried to fight for it back, and people got through the press, and then there were easy chances. It feels like it's almost exacerbated by the fact that we have this inversion, and then you have these like a really narrow 5 essentially who have to just deal with whatever's coming their way. And yeah, like Sam touched on, and you touched on with Romeo as well, like Lavia for me, people talk about the versatility, but in his career he doesn't really know what his favored position is, right? And if like one of the people who's supposed to be the midfielder in the midfield doesn't really know his own specialisms, his own like favored position, then that's really troubling, right? Because they don't know the kind of very basics of that role. Like for me, Lavia going up through City was more of a kind of deep line playmaker. He wasn't much of a destroyer, right? But then in this role, he kind of has to be. He like has to clean everything up. He has to make sure that nothing gets past him. Like Andre, but by comparison, he does have that versatility because he's been forced to play those roles from a very young age into professional football, right? And Lavia's injuries haven't helped that. He's not been allowed to develop because he just hasn't had the game time. And I think that you can't blame him for that, right? So yeah, bringing someone like a Moy into that midfield is going to massively upgrade us, because he just knows the role and he knows the kind of limits of where he needs to go. And yeah, but I still think that kind of transitional offside trap, like even if we get completely up to speed, it's still going to be a huge gamble. And it's something that Maresca did at Leicester as well. So we just have to like nail it. We have to get it absolutely right every single time. Otherwise, we're going to give away big chances, Nick.
What I found odd about the back line, and I'll move on to goalkeeper and pass the ball to Sam here, is for as adventurous as Wes was, and for as responsibility laden as Reese was, the left side of the line was worse. And that to me is it's a mouthful to say, but that's tough. I mean, I think Betty Shield obviously struggled massively in this game and hasn't looked confident for quite some time. Levi was struggling with when to rotate or when to press up, and I think got burned a couple of times. Obviously, receiving little help from Mudryk in the first half, and even worse from Sterling in the second half. But these are all just parts of how this thing's going to come together. So, no more belaboring the point. The backline let in 4 goals, and it was bad. Sam, let's touch on the adventures of Robert Sanchez, who I think, by all accounts, had a pretty okay first half. Made a couple of big saves, had some okay short distribution, largely struggled in the second half, was playing where Lavia should have played for some of it, which was, again, very interesting. Even making a kind of a flying kick pass over at one point. Obviously, Chelsea just today have signed Philip Jorgensen, who's Danish goalkeeper, Villarreal, who I assume is meant to come in and challenge, or you wouldn't make that signing at this point of the summer. What are your thoughts on Sanchez through 2 games, and how's this going to go the rest of the preseason?
Well, yeah, that's an interesting catch-22, to be honest. When your goalkeeper has to be an extra center back and he comes out to tackle somebody 35 yards off his line, misses, and then is seen like jogging back with his back 4 like in behind him, doesn't really write a very confident picture, to be honest. But that's the image, like enduring image, burnt into my mind. And it was a tough game for everybody, to be honest. I'm not going to pick out
No.
players and say that he needs to do better. Everybody should have been much better. That first half save, which kept it at, I think, 1-0, was fantastic from him. And I thought, okay, wow, he's turned the corner, seeing that he's getting a new competitor. But he has to know his job is on the line now. He definitely has to up his game, and I don't think he's good enough. Like, the second half distribution wasn't anywhere close to what Maresca would want from him, who famously told Mads Hermansen, "You play it long, and I'm going to substitute you," against Birmingham. So um, that's all that Sanchez was doing. And again, like you mentioned, the possession stats in the first half, we were at 48% at one point in time. So is that what you were brought here to do? Possession-oriented game when your goalkeeper is going long. But then I also look at the midfield, and Reese and Lavia were like genuinely not on the same wavelength in terms of when to receive. I again keep bringing the eights back because like they are the fulcrum in the side, and if they're not doing the right things in terms of bouncing passes back to the pivots, if they're not making that space, then essentially there's a huge disconnect between what you're trying to do in defense and in attack. It just doesn't sort of fit together. So it will improve, but again, the goalkeeper has to be, the first point of contact, and I don't think he's providing that pace. But I'm hoping he turns it around. He still has a couple of games in him, so fingers crossed, and let's hope for the best.
Just quickly, because I know like part of, I think, the frustration of the way that buildup was going, and probably all of the parts not working together appropriately, was that Sanchez started to do the medium and long range balls as the game progressed, Sam. And I was just looking at this going, I think he completed 1, and I'm not sure how many he missed. And so if our response to playing a team that is going to aggressively press us Man City, first game of the season, is that we're going to try and kind of forego some of that shorter buildup with some of those medium and long range passes, and they don't connect. Where do we go from there? Because clearly, for all the talk of Sanchez being the incumbent and being the better possession, goalkeeper and all that sort of stuff, those passes are really nowhere close. He blazed a few over Madueke on the right side that just were not even playable. So where do we go if we're struggling short and long and medium?
Yeah, you're spot on. So that's what the goalkeeper's there for. Like, he should be able to give you a 2+4 at the back. And that helps when teams sit back against you and they feel like, okay, they can just, take it easy. Then you've got an extra man everywhere across the pitch because your goalkeeper is just playing as an extra outfielder. And obviously, when you're being pressed intensely by a good quality side, then you should be able to play into the traffic. Maresca stresses that very, very, coherently, that you have to be able to play into the pressure. Very De Zerbi-esque. Like, if you're not going to take that risk, then you're not going to pull players out of position, especially a team or like Arsenal or City who are superbly well organized out of possession. So your goalkeeper has to have the guts to do it, and the execution has to be, I would say, at least an 8 on 10. And if that doesn't happen, then you hit a roadblock right away. I've also mentioned in like the thread that I've done, he does give you the freedom to go as long as you're trying to target areas where there is like a 1v1 or a 2v2. But even then, get your diagonals right. Don't blaze it over your winger's head, and don't try to find the man. Like, try to find the space. And none of these things are sort of intricacies that I see in Sanchez's passing. Like, he doesn't tend to do these things. So yeah, it needs to be clean. Obviously, if these are the kind of errors that he's doing right now, let's just hope that he can wipe the slate clean, get it out of his system, and as and when he gets fitter and better, and the side looks good around him, everything looks better. But yeah, I mean, it doesn't inspire you, Nick, if like everybody in your defensive line is losing their shit. You start to lose your shit. It's just a chain reaction. So, chaos breeds chaos. One person sneezes in a room or yawns in a room, and everybody does the same. It's just human psychology. So,
Oh
yeah,
man.
I'm just trying to justify this train wreck. Please do not pile on me. I'm trying to don't kill the messenger. I'm just trying to
No,
be a beacon of hope in your dreary existence.
no. Producer Jake has also let us know there are some Celtic fans in the chat. Welcome. We're having some fun with this one. You guys hopefully are too. Everyone just be nice. Look, the last position group that we want to touch on is the attack. Obviously, just the one goal off the penalty today, but plenty of chances to have scored multiple goals in this game. Take your pick of any of the forward players that you want to highlight, Ollie. I think there were some positive signs from Guiu, some positive signs from Karn, some positive signs from Nkunku, some positive signs from Raz, less so from Sterling and Madueke, personally for me. But any thoughts on the attack, and if you saw anything new from the Wrexham game?
Yeah, I mean, to me, just a lot of the attackers look quite laboured. They didn't look fit. And when they're one-on-one opportunities, as Sam was saying earlier, and you're coming up against a much fitter team, you need to be much sharper, and your kind of physicality needs to shine through in those instances. So yeah, the problem we had was that we were trying to do the same thing over and over again out wide, in my opinion. So Mudryk, when he touched the ball, which admittedly wasn't very often when he was on the pitch, but it was his first game back, was cutting inside. Noni cutting inside. And we know how kind of one-footed a lot of our attackers are. And I think, to be honest, even when we're completely fit, I think that's a problem, right? Because, it's all well and good cutting inside and, planting it far corner if you're Ian Robin, but we're not in that era anymore. You have to have a bit of versatility, and even Ian had a bit of versatility, of course. So I think just having the ability to go outside your man is going to be key going forward. I think just the general lack of fitness was pretty palpable for the entire game, really. And Kunku dispatched his penalty pretty well. He's going to be a really important player for us this season. The fact he got through another game unscathed is really big for me. Like, I don't really care about anything else other than the fact that, fitness for me is doing well. I think maybe one of the ups that we maybe want to come on to is like the fitness coach. Like, we got through 2 whole games.
Just calm down. Calm down.
I'm trying to scrape around.
Everyone knock on wood. Find a piece of wood. We need to.
Yeah. Okay.
Ollie, in that defense, it's hard to get injured when you're not running, to be honest. So let's just wait. Yeah. Let's just wait.
If any team could do it, Sam, we could do it. We could get injured not running. Come on. Look, I would just give
the Celtic fans in the chat, haven't felt this victorious since Braveheart. So I'm happy they're having their, moment in the sunlight. So
let them have fun.
Good on ya. Yeah, glorious bastards.
There it is. Love it. Yeah, I would just call out Raz as an option. This was a kind of a sneaky vote for player of the preseason for me. He's played in these systems before. When he came on, there was an immediate impact. He probably should have scored a couple. He definitely should have assisted a couple. His final balls are tough for him. But he did look sharp for the most part. I thought that he did semi-press, although I'm still not seeing enough of that from those wing positions. And I think could be an incumbent heading into the start of the season. It would not be a surprise to me to see Sterling start the first game on the left wing, especially if Jackson's carrying anything deeper with this ankle injury. You're probably going to have to play Nkunku up top or Guiu. Who knows? Who knows? So look, let's pause the position group analysis, the match analysis. It was bad. Okay. We played like shit. I think everyone knows that. I think that's okay. It's preseason. Some worrying signs that we've talked about, but let's just talk about the point of preseason, especially in the implementation of a new system, right? This is something that I am, I think rewinding my brain over the last few preseasons with new managers on and trying to sort out kind of how they implemented their systems versus what Maresca is doing. This has been for me a rip the Band-Aid off. We are reinstilling all sorts of stuff all across the pitch. Your position is different. Your role is different. The way we move the ball is different. The way that we defend is different. The way we play goalkeeper, admittedly different than before. This to me is a you would rather have it be awful now and have it be struggle filled now and have it be difficult now than in November. This is, just rip it off. Don't sugarcoat things. Don't do a slow build up. Just, we're going to roll this thing until everyone kind of feels comfortable. And then we'll look back on the 4-1 loss to Celtic in preseason and have a good chuckle. There are a lot of other points of preseason. Ollie, fitness, which you have brought up, is massive. Reinstilling confidence from a bunch of players who weren't fit last year, barely played last year, that they will have a role in this team building writ large, how these players build relationships with each other and the coaching staff. What is the one takeaway from this preseason, if nothing else happens, that you think is the point of this preseason?
I mean, yeah, aside from fitness that I've already touched on, just getting through unscathed is a huge deal for this group. Just not even joking. The last 3 years have been horrific. Just a catastrophe in terms of injuries, and it's been very not funny to watch that happen year after year. So just getting through the first two, just making sure we're getting to those levels of fitness is completely a number one thing for me. But yeah, instilling a plan that we want to take forward into August would just be a huge thing, because not to go back over last year, but Pochettino, we had a very strange kind of mixed system in preseason. and within like 10 seconds of what, even before kickoff and the first game of the season, we'd abandoned it, right? So I think just taking through, if we want to have a plan of in terms of like the tactics going forward, like just having some consistency over it and ironing out these kinks, like maybe allowing Reece to drift wide every once in a while, maybe having that kind of central midfielder that can be an anchor, maybe giving them a bit more space. Because I think a lot of the issues we had today in midfield were simply just because we were so narrow that it was very easy to press. Like it's much easier to press two players who are within 10 yards of each other than it is for players who are rotating. And I don't mean Wesley rotating to number 10. I mean, like, the midfield is allowed to drift wide or drift closer, right? And the more Nkunku and Khans play these kind of 8 roles, or whoever comes back in, like a Cole Palmer or whoever, then we may see the differences in terms of that understanding, that kind of increase in quality, whatever. I do think we do have to discuss the kind of square pegs in round holes conundrum at this stage of the season, because for me, I just think fundamentally we're not employing our best players in their best positions right now. That's just objectively or subjectively, in terms of my opinion, what's going on right now. But I do think a lot of that maybe is down to fitness. Maybe further into the preseason, we'll see changes. So yeah, I think it will just be interesting to see tactically where we are come Man City, because this game, as you say, rip the band-aid off. This may make Maresca think about these things, right?
Mm-hmm.
We saw under Conte, he wanted to play his 3-4-3 system. He absolutely fundamentally wanted to play it. And it took us going away to Arsenal and losing for him to actually start employing his system,
Correct.
right? I know I know this is kind of the way Maresca played last season, and maybe something that kind of is dear to him, but he does talk about, not Pep Guardiola being the only main kind of source of his managerial career, right? He takes stuff from Lippi and Ancelotti and other managers who maybe allow kind of more freedom of expression, a bit more individualism. So just that tactical plan is something I want to see come out of this preseason, Nick.
God, I'd kill to play shithouse Ancelotti ball again. What a delight. Sam, let's move on to kind of our last section here. And for everyone who has participated, put in their comments and questions, or engaged with other fan bases who decided to enter the chat here, thank you. This has been more fun than I thought it was going to be, frankly. So thanks to everyone who's participated. Sam, I'll give you the first word on the last section here, which is, between now and the Club America game, I should say, what is one thing that you would hope to see this Chelsea team do really well between now and then?
Yeah, I think a lot more tactical work in terms of just possession fundamentals. The difference between what we saw at Leicester and what we've seen at Chelsea is still not there. And again, a lot of Leicester fans did point out that in the initial weeks of the season, Maresca was very quickly able to enforce his style of play. Like, there was a distinct change in how Leicester played the season before and the season after. I think the first game was against Liverpool, and they ended up like playing pretty well, even though they lost. And I think it's just some evidence of progress being made on the training pitch, that instructions are being followed, that certain roles are being embraced. It's not ideal, like you pointed out, for a lot of players. There's a lot of unlearning and learning that has to happen on the pitch. And certain players don't have, default positions like the tens, or like in Nkunku, for example, looks pretty uncomfortable in that 8 position. So I would love to see him sort of get like that centre forward position. If you remember the pod that we did with Matt, who said that he's probably considering playing Nkunku in that 9 role. With Jackson out and still recuperating, I wouldn't mind Nkunku starting at 9,
Yeah.
and then figuring out if you could play Mudryk or Sterling at left wing, and bring, say, Keenan Dewsbury Hall at left centre midfield, because he's going to offer, I think, a transformative presence in terms of how he interprets that role. It's going to change that left side dynamic. So that's what I'd love to see. Just fill in the contours. Right now, what we're seeing is just bones, like bare bones. Get the flesh and blood going, and hopefully we'll see what you're trying to put into play. So still early days. I'm not panicking as yet. If this continues, say just before or just after the Real Madrid game and into the Inter Milan game, then I'll be hammering that eject button furiously. But right now, calm my heads.
Oh my God. Ollie, same question to you. What do you want to see change between today? Obviously, there's a lot of options. And when we play Club America.
Yeah, I think getting back, some of our key players fit is a key thing here. Seeing maybe Moy get some minutes, I think is kind of key. I would like to see Dewsbury Hall. He's come through. He's obviously someone who knows the system very well, so clearly he doesn't need that initial training.
He's coming back off a small operation that was reported today. I think he's being kind of slow rolled into this team, and like from everything that we've been through the last 3 years, whatever. Like, who cares? We don't see him until City. It doesn't matter to me. But it would be cool to see someone else kind of play in those eights for sure.
Exactly, right. It just kind of nailing down how these players fit best. And I think to Sam's point, like Nkunku could have played 9, when Guiu went off, but he put Tyreek George up there. So clearly, like the idea the idea is that maybe Nkunku needs to be that kind of 8-10 in this system. So I think part of that is interesting to me. Like, what is it that Nkunku gives in that role that he thinks he loses in the 9, or vice versa? But yeah, I think just the main thing between now and Club America is just making sure everyone's fit, bringing back whoever we can get. I know Kinnan does only just come back on the grass, but Moy is potentially on the outskirts of the squad, so we'll see. Just a general uptick in fitness is what I really want to see. It was so obvious early on in the game today that players were trying to do things and their legs just weren't letting them do it. Like Khan's striding through in his inimitable way, but it was kind of running away from him, and you're like, you don't associate that with a fit Khan. So yeah, just getting a couple of steps further along, just a couple of steps fitter. I think that will be really important coming into Club America.
Yeah, I think mine is I want to see Madueke calm down. Like by all reporting and everyone who's watched up in training, he's been a stud in training, has really shown up and done a good job. In the matches, not so much. And like, he does have a bag of talent. He clearly needs to develop that right foot a lot more than it has been to this point. But right now, if Cole Palmer is going to be playing inside, which is like the rumor that is going around, then he is the default right winger. And we need him to be much, much better if that is going to be the case, because, unlike the left side where I think you have a couple of different options, especially with Tyreek George, who I really am enjoying the look of, the right side's a little threadbare right now. There, aren't that many options if you are not going to play Palmer out there. So, I'm just kind of a little watch there, because I think Madueke, if he slows his mind down a little bit, it will benefit him. Just calm down, play the ball that you can play, and be a little bit more unpredictable. I think one of the things that I enjoyed with him last year is he was unpredictable. He did try and emulate a little bit of Cole Palmer's best qualities, which is you don't know where that dude's next move is, right? He needs to do a little bit more of that, because he can become pretty predictable. He either goes all the way down on his right foot to the byline, or he cuts in on his left. And those are his 2 moves, and that's all he has. So if you're a defender, it's pretty easy to defend that. And I think he is trickier than that. Certainly has a lot more skill than that. I just want to end with a quick news roundup. I thank everyone for hanging on for an hour after what was an admittedly kind of tough 2 hours of the game. Apparently, Maresca has said as of now that Marquillo is staying with the club. This is obviously without any other transfers of a forward line type of player coming in. That is a interesting development for sure, and might signal that there isn't another option that's coming in. Obviously, Chelsea have confirmed goalkeeper Philip Jorgensen from Villarreal and Anselmino today. So these are 2 players that have been long rumored, but I think are officially signed. Palmer, Gallagher, and Cucurella will not be a part of the U.S. tour. They'll all come back to Cobham August 6th or thereabouts. So they'll have like not even a week of training before the Inter Milan game. Cool. And I can't remember if there was another big story that broke, but I feel like those are like the main talking points. Anything else that you guys want to close with before we drop out of this? I'll let you first.
Yeah, no, I mean, to your point about Madueke, I completely agree. I think he can, like, I've watched him since Spurs and the youth days, and I really think he's a great talent that could really be honed into something. But he does really need to diversify in what he's offering. And I think like the Elise stuff this summer has just been like another thing that has just kind of pushed at him and made him kind of really want to prove himself in these games. And yeah, especially when you're unfit, like trying things that would usually be really natural to you isn't as easy. And yeah, I think that's all coming into it. And he's still a very young player, right? He still needs that kind of coaching. And you know, when he's got no right back behind him to help him out, that's another kind of issue for him. But yeah, I think I completely double down on what you're saying in terms of Madueke. He just needs to calm down a bit, and then we can see where we're offering. Otherwise, Cole Palmer right wing it is, you know, because that's the reality of things.
Sam, final thought?
Yeah, where is Axel Disasi? I have no idea where he is. He's not injured.
He had an operation apparently, and so they're slow rolling him back as well. This is what's being reported. That was the other piece of news that I forgot. So you have like Jackson, Dewsbury Hall, Disasi, all there but out to this point. So
yeah, interesting. Yeah, that's good. I mean, I'm looking forward to just having like the 5 key players that we're missing back. We're also forgetting Cucurella, who's had a very, very good summer. So I think he'll be pretty good to slot in on the left-hand side and maybe give, Reese a little bit of a tryout as a third center back. Maybe there's something else that could happen there. Yeah, I'm not counting that out either, but just having Dewsbury Hall and Connor in those 8 positions, I think Moy is going to be transformative, absolutely spectacular. Like Ollie said, we watched him in Copa America, both of us, and he looked spectacular for Ecuador. So played as a 10, played as an 8, was stellar in both positions. And yeah, back to front, will be great to have Jackson back as well. If you can give Estevao and Paez an aging portion and somehow get them in early, also a big bonus. But let's wait till 2025. But yeah, I'm not too down on this.
They just show up with a fake mustache and a slightly different name and new signings. I mean, they look great. So look, thank you again to everyone. We appreciate it. Thanks for hanging on with us. This will be the podcast that is out in your podcast feeds as well. So if you're listening to this, we had a lot of fun. So if you heard some screen names and stuff like that, come join us on YouTube for the next one. But until next time, Chelsea fans, you know what to do. Keep the blue flag flying high.